Welcome to the 5am podcast, where we bring you insightful conversations with thought leaders and influencers who are making headway and some waves in their callings and industries. Today, we are thrilled to have Shannon Russell with us. She has blazed a trail in the world of career transitions, pivots, and entrepreneurship. Shannon is the CEO of Second Act Success Coaching. She is an exit strategy expert and a career transition and business coach. With over 16 years of experience as a television producer in New York City and Los Angeles, Shannon made a bold pivot from producing shows for others to producing her own life. And now she empowers others to leave unfulfilling careers and build joyful, purpose-centered businesses. Shannon is the author of Start Your Second Act, How to Change Careers, Launch a Business, and Create Your Best Life. Plus, she hosts the popular Second Act Success Career podcast. Her journey from the entertainment industry to entrepreneurship is not just inspiring, but also practical as she helps others navigate their own career transitions. Now, before we roll that intro, please share this episode with your friends and networks. I know many are going to enjoy this conversation and take something home with them. Now, there's two other things that you can do to help 5am Podcast. You can give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast player. And we thank you for that support. But not necessarily more important, ladies and gentlemen, but we are going to say a special thanks to those who have ventured over to buymeacoffee.com/5am podcast. They've bought us some cups of coffee this week and last, and we do appreciate your support. So if you want to join those early risers who've bought into the mission of support for 5am podcast, we will welcome you in, and you will help us help others seize their days. Now, let's roll that intro. Shannon Russell, welcome to the 5am podcast.
Thank you for having me, Michael. I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be good. I know we've got lots to talk about. I know a bunch of stuff, ladies and gentlemen, that I did not hit the record button for that you did not get to hear, but that's okay. We were just chatting about things and places and careers and all that kind of good stuff. So Shannon, you've had quite a journey from television production to career coaching. What was that defining moment that made you realize it was time to stop producing for other people and start your second act?
Yeah, it was definitely a moment. I can tell you, I was running through the Times Square subway station in heels, 8 months pregnant, trying to get the bus back to the suburbs in New Jersey to pick up my 3-year-old from daycare. And it was in that stressful moment where I said, you know what? I don't want to do this every day for the rest of my life. And yeah, I just had this epiphany that I had accomplished what I wanted to accomplish in television, and that it was time to start a second act, see what I could do outside of the entertainment industry, and start producing my own life.
Yes. And ladies and gentlemen, Shannon and I both share that background in broadcast and television production. And it is like wearing a wet blanket all the time. That's kind of what it is. And cement shoes, maybe, depending on the day of who's above you and where they want you to go. So it can get this idea, ladies and gentlemen, that it's this all-encompassing. I get everybody thinks that, but I will tell you, from working in, I was going to say living in production, which that's what it kind of feels like, living there. They might as well move a cot into the office for you. But Shannon, in your experience, what are the most common fears that hold people back from making those significant career changes?
I think it's like what you had just said. Like, we are so ingrained in our career for so long,
Yeah.
and it really is all encompassing. And then when you think about doing anything else, you instantly have that fear and that imposter syndrome that your skills won't transfer anywhere else. And I think a lot of people just feel also, and in addition to that, that who am I to want to make a change? I have had clients say to me, well, doesn't everyone hate their job? Shouldn't I just suck it up and stay here? And it's like, no. So I think it's just that fear that I'm associated with this. And if I change, who am I? And I try to explain that you're taking that with you. You and I, Michael, we could go back and produce tomorrow if someone asks us to, right? We could.
Yeah,
it's part of us. But we're choosing to do something else. And for anyone changing, you can always go back. It's just a part of you.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's remembering who owns your life. We can get the idea that we're invested in this career, and I've spent so much time, and I've had all those, like the school of hard knocks have come. Can you talk about giving yourself permission to actually move on?
Yes, because that was a real hard lesson I had to learn. It was probably a good year from that last moment when I decided, okay, I'm not going to look for my next television job. I'm going to figure out what else I'm going to do. And it was me going through different paths of I tried to get a 9 to 5 job, thinking that was the responsible thing to do for my family. And then I started a master's degree program thinking, well, I'll become a teacher because that's responsible. And so I was choosing all of these things that other people or society kind of says that we should do as moms. And all of a sudden I was like, these just don't fit. So yeah, just trying to choose and trying to give myself that permission that it's okay to think outside of the box and then write down all of the things that I think I might want to do and then look at my skills and see what correlates. And I
Yeah.
started thinking, wow, if I can produce this idea for a television show and get it to the screen, then I can take an idea for a business and grow it.
Yes, absolutely. I will say that, like speaking to our audience as well as to yourself and myself, when you're a good producer, nobody wants to let you go. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to account for not even the seconds.
Mm-mm.
There's like 30 images in 1 second. We have to account for everything within that time. And we've got to have bumps, and we know when we're going to break, and, we've got a teleprompter, and it's all so controlled, and we probably love that control and having that control over other people. And so how about when people have a career that's really intense, and they're dominating because they live in kind of a world of domination with their careers? How do they start to untie themselves from that? What does that process look like?
A lot of times I say to turn inwards, get quiet, and actually ask yourself if you're happy. Are you happy with all that control and the high stress? And when we do have those conversations with ourselves, sometimes we think or we realize that, you know what, I'm not really enjoying this, or this isn't something I would choose if I were going to start over.
Yeah,
And
right.
then to kind of say again, like, you know what? I've done it. I've accomplished it. I think life might look a little bit less stressful if I pivot to this other role or if I do start a business and go out on my own. So just to turn inward and kind of ask yourself, like, do you want all of this power and this high stress
Yeah.
at this juncture of your life? Because we can choose our career at 20, but when you're later in life, it might not fit or be aligned with really what your priorities are.
Yeah, and how our mindset changes
Mm.
over the years, and what we actually mature as we go through those decades of our life. And can you talk about how, like, it's not actually too late to start over?
Absolutely not. I think at any age. And a perfect example is I have this former client of mine who she started working with me when she turned 60. That was about a year, maybe 2 years ago now. And she had just gotten divorced and she was always spending her entire life helping her husband, who was a doctor, run his medical practice. And at 60 and divorced, she said, it's time for me to do something. And she had a lot of health issues. She had recovered from cancer and she had to eat sugar free, gluten free. She had to bake and cook that way. So she started baking her own cakes and forming her own recipes and getting different certifications. And she started a business baking gluten free, sugar free, all of that for companies and for other restaurants. And she takes orders for birthday parties. And I just love that she was able to create this business at 60. Like, how cool is that? And now she's just happy and in control of her life for the first time.
That's good. I think that this is what I'm finding anyway, so I'll just caveat this. But it
Yeah.
seems like we don't have to use the word retiring. We can actually use the word refiring.
Ooh.
That we're actually just taking, feel free to use that. So we're actually just taking all that we've learned, all those pressures, all those ugly things that still roll around that we have to compartmentalize and put on the shelf mentally. We can
Yeah.
take all of those things and say, I'm just going to use this as my, like, your second act, our second act. Or can you talk about if someone is thinking about this, stepping off the crazy train? Thank you, Ozzy. Stepping off the crazy train and looking for a place to land. How do they start to define where they actually want to go?
Yeah, I love that question because it can be the world is your oyster at that point, right? And that's
Yeah.
where I do like to look at our skills and experiences and choose what we no longer want to take with us to that new venture. And then really start thinking about it and start researching, because you can have a couple different ideas of what you want to do next, but it's not until you start doing that deep dive research that you realize what that day to day of that role will be.
Yeah.
And I've had clients say, you know what? No, that doesn't sound like what I want after all. And you can check it off the list and you can go down and really narrow down what that option might be. And then
Yeah.
really start planning out kind of that roadmap or that timeline to get you there. And so it might be like, you know what? I'm going to work for just a little bit longer and save money and then venture into this next role. But you got to do that self reflection and really thinking and that research. I think research equals confidence for you to
Yeah.
move forward and know you're ready.
Right. And it's that shift of identity,
Yeah.
I think, too, right? For so long, I know that was my title. I worked so hard for this, whatever it is, mobile
Yep.
coordinator, senior producer, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on. And so have you had some clients that really struggled with, wow, I'm actually going to be called by a different name. I'm going to have a different identity.
Yep. And I like this exercise of really writing down every title that you've ever had. And it can be husband, wife, father, sister, neighbor, whatever it is. And you write it down and you go, whoa, I actually have so many titles. And that career title is just one.
Just one.
And you just one, and you can go and you can keep adding more. And that experience gets added to your, what I call like a lifelong resume. So it just
Yeah.
makes you that much more of a fuller person to start that next venture. And so a title is really just something that we use as, it's very, what's the word? Like not selfish, but it's very polished and it's just there, but it's not anything tangible that
Yeah.
we hold in our hands. So it is that mindset shift of saying, you know what, I can leave that behind or take it with me and add it into this other thing. And yeah, I've had clients who feel that way, but more so, I feel like I have clients who come to me when they're just so unhappy and so stuck that they just want to take that leap, that they've really molded over for a long time
Yeah.
and they're just ready to start fresh. And I think when you can get to that point, when you're like, you know what, I've done it, I'm proud of myself for lasting this long.
Mhm.
Let's give another adventure a try in this one life that we live.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. While you were talking that, I was kind of in, probably because of a show my wife and I were watching yesterday, but I was thinking of this finance guy just wanting to pack it all in, all the stress, all the phone calls. I don't care. I'll own a paint store
Yeah.
or a hardware store. Have you come across some people that have just had it, that's enough, and I will deliver newspapers. I don't care.
Oh, yeah. And I can tell you there was one client who was like that. She was in an advertising agency. It was so high stress. She was missing
Yes.
dinners with her kids, all of that, a lot of, as we know from the hours in production. And it was just like, get me out of here. I will do anything. And so she actually quit before she started working with me. And then we did the dive into everything. And we said, okay, let's take all these ideas that are swirling in your head and figure out what works best. But at that point, it was just like something broke, something snapped, and anything would be better than where she was. And I often say you don't want to get to that point if you can help it, or if you're
Yeah.
starting to feel that way, start putting some work into figuring out what your next act will be while you're working, so you have that plan B ready to go.
Yeah, that place to land. So let's chat about your book. It's entitled Start Your Second Act. Can you share a key strategy from your book that our listeners could apply and even begin to maybe get a notebook? And there you go, notebook, ladies and gentlemen, lots of scribbles on there.
Yeah.
Is there some key thing that they could start writing down?
Yep. And so I share my transition out of television production, and then I share success stories from other people who have launched into a second act. But most importantly, I share what I call the second act strategy. So it's a 3-step strategy that I use with my clients. And it's all about accepting and appreciating where you come from, applying and amplifying where you can go next, and then really just accelerating the next step and getting you to where you need to be. And so I break it all down in the book. And I also have, it really is a hands-on workbook. I wanted it to be a resource for people. So at the end of each chapter, there are questions to ask yourself and, different prompts that you can actually do the work and get your answers out in there. So yeah, I think at the end of reading that book, you're going to have done a lot of work on yourself to figure out what you really want to do to feel fulfilled.
Yeah. And Now, you've mentioned that having one career path almost doesn't cut it anymore. And maybe how do you advise people to balance multiple passions or career interests?
Yeah, I think that, you can have one. My parents have had the same, my dad retired from 18 until retirement in the same job. But now I think it's important to maybe think about different revenue streams. So even if you have a job, if you're a doctor and you think it's very stable, it's not going anywhere. So think about what you can do on the side to bring in extra revenue, or maybe you want to write a book so you can get your creative side out there, or you want to start a podcast. So I think it's important, and not even important, but just more fulfilling to think about all of the different aspects of our life and what we want out of where we spend most of our time in our day, which is working. So to think about what you want to do so that at the end of the day, you don't have any regrets. So really, you can go on the same path, but maybe you can do a side hustle or volunteer at an organization that means a lot to you, but bring something else into the fold for your week that's going to give you that joy.
Right. It's kind of like that question that my wife and I used to ask each other when we were coming up with a wild and crazy plan of how are we going to feel 25 years from now if we don't do it or if we do it?
Mm,
Are we gonna think back and say, I wish I would, I wonder what would happen if we would have actually jumped off that cliff with the hang glider or something
yeah.
like that. And I think part of that is not knowing where to put fear and how we want to define fear. Can you talk about some of the things that can hold people back or maybe held you back from transitioning?
It's that chaos, the fear of making a change that feels a little selfish in the moment
Yeah.
because you're afraid to cause chaos in your family and disrupt the pattern of your life. And I think that's it's understandable. I think we all feel that way. We're in such routines that thinking about disrupting that pattern to try something new is uncomfortable, and there's a fear there. So it's just, and I dealt with that for sure. It's like I remember my husband saying, but you make such a good salary and there's this and there's all these reasons to stay. And I said, yes, but I missed the first birthday. I missed my son's first Halloween. Like I can't keep missing things and 25 years from now be regretting that. So it was a decision that I made that I stood with despite the fear,
Yeah.
because I was fearing more that 25 years in the future and how I would feel then. So
Yeah.
I think that question you and your wife ask each other, that is very valid.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's great to keep moving forward and to have our empathy in maybe a small box. We don't
Yeah.
always let empathy out and we keep kind of focused on the main thing. And I'm just thinking back to your transition from employee to entrepreneur. What were some of the really big challenges that maybe you yourself or you and your husband had to tackle in these transitions?
Well, especially because I opened a franchise business as my first business that I ran for 8 years and recently sold last year. And that business, I didn't make money for that first year or so. And I think a lot of business owners in the making don't realize that it takes time to make money. So you have to have that financial nest egg ready to go or be prepared. And also it's putting yourself out there in a whole new way. You're in a new industry, you're in a new role, and just saying, I don't feel confident, but I have to do it anyway. And I had to do that. I was marketing a brand new business to my community, and just I didn't feel ready, but I just had to do it anyway. And you just face that fear. And then you can look back and go, wow, because I faced that fear, I got to the other side successfully. So it does work. And then that business becoming really successful fast led me to say, I want to be able to help other people and start my coaching business, because I saw there was a need when other women would come up and say, well, how did you go from TV to this franchise? Can you help me? And I feel like this is the most fulfilling thing I've done. And is another dream job, just being able to
Yeah.
help other people.
Yeah. And I think probably you being able to see people realize, oh, I could have success outside of this world that I knew. I was watching something on one of the interweb things, and it was talking about the different kinds of praise that you can give to children and what the outcome is of that praise. And the first group of children received the, oh, you're a good boy, you're a good girl, you did, oh, really nice, that's great, and kind of complimented them on who they were. The second group got the compliments of, wow, you persevered, you overcame, you really worked hard to get through that math problem. I really like how you like stuck with it. And it was actually that second group that did better on the next series of tests than that first group that was just
Mm,
complimented on, kind of looks, appearance, who they are.
right.
And
Wow.
so it's fascinating the words that we can tell ourselves or the words that we could tell other people. But this might seem off topic, but I think it's connected. In your opinion, what do you think the like those top three transferable skills that most professionals maybe they overlook them, but they're actually real valuable assets?
Oh, I love that question. I often talk about retail being a skill, like if you've done
Mm,
customer service, because
right.
you're ready to put out fires and you know how to deal with other people. And if you can do that, you can do anything in any aspect of business or any industry, really.
Yeah.
Communication is key, right? Being able to communicate what's going on, talking to a team, talking to a manager, talking to clients or partners. And I think resilience is a skill that we all need in any industry or any role because there are going to be challenges. You're going to take things personally. There's going to be ups and downs. But to be able to say, kind of like that group too that you just mentioned,
Yeah.
yeah, good job. You got through it. You were resilient. You got through that challenge. You came out on the other side. You did your best. And I think if you can do that, that'll take you very far.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, your podcast features stories of career changes. Was there one that was the most surprising or inspiring transition that you've encountered?
There are so many, Michael,
I
but
bet.
one that I like to share because I found it brilliant. This woman was working in fashion. I believe it was Ralph Lauren in New York City, working, this amazing job, really high profile. And she had kids and things were changing. And she decided after having her little one that she wanted to become a lactation consultant and help families feed their newborns. And so she used her almost 2-hour commute each way to study and get her certification while she was working in Manhattan. So instead of listening to, podcasts
Hmm.
or reading books, she was studying. And after I forget how many months it was, she got certified. She was able to start her business and quit her job.
That is perseverance and
Yes.
perspective
And
on the,
using your time wisely. Like,
yeah,
wow, that's
yeah. That's,
amazing that she was able to do that, I think.
yeah. And we all have that same amount of time. It's just how we realize how valuable our time is. And maybe
Yes.
that's actually something that we could just briefly touch on is understanding the value of time and how we can actually use it to propel ourselves forward.
Mm. Yep. I often say we've got, everyone, whether you're working at home or in an office, you have those 15, maybe 30 minutes in the morning where you're just surfing the web or checking social media. That is time you could be using to work on your business plan or, update your resume or LinkedIn and make it productive. And then there's that hour lunch or half-hour lunch that you can be using, or that time when the kids go to bed, or the time after dinner where you're kind of lounging around a little full and you're trying to decide what to watch on
Yes.
TV.
Right.
If you have a goal, it's those little pockets during your day. It doesn't have to be every day, but know that there's those pockets that you can use to be productive. Even that 10 or 15 minutes a day or 10 or 15 minutes a week will get you further than if you just laid on the couch and watched Netflix.
That's right. And fits for physical fitness too. 10 minutes is better than no minutes.
Love that. Exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is something that's a really good reminder for us is those 10 or 15 minutes spent on some sort of self-improvement
Mm.
will pay us far better dividends than that doom scrolling as they
Yeah,
call it, right?
exactly.
I was chatting with a fellow by the name of Adam Torres, a really nice guy. We did a recording last week, and his show is out. And one of the things that he talked about was personal brand. And
Mm.
we don't always think about this. So I'm going to ask you a question about this and get your feedback on it because you mentioned LinkedIn, as
Yeah.
did Adam, and he said, Michael, if you don't update your LinkedIn and you're not intentional about those open portals to the world, that is your brand. So can you talk a
Mm.
little bit about if someone realizes, oh, I've been in, I thought I was going to retire here. I've got 25 years left and I think I need to make a change. What are some of those practical tips that they could do now for their digital persona that would help them move forward?
I love that. That's really great advice that he said too.
Yeah,
I'm going to listen to that episode.
good.
But yeah, LinkedIn, I am very pro LinkedIn. Really, any of your socials. You want to have your recent role, of course. But if you are job searching or starting a business, your LinkedIn should be written for that. Don't have it written for what you do now, your headline, your pictures. It should all be written for what you are moving into for your second act. It should be very well thought out. And that's something you can do over your lunch break or in those pockets in your day. There's no reason that that's not up to date for all of us. It takes, not very much time. There's professionals who can do it for you. You just want it updated because people are looking all the time and new opportunities can come up. And so that even your resume, if you think there's a chance you might have to start using that again, or your business or online portfolio, everything should always be updated because when you do get that notice that you might be let go or you decide to leave abruptly, that's not the time to rush and try to do it. So,
Exactly.
yeah. And honestly, I think LinkedIn is such a way to keep in touch and just keep adding to your network and
Yeah.
engage.
Yeah, that's right. And it's also to it reminds us to keep forward thinking
Yes.
and not to be stuck in our I don't want to say rut. I just did say rut, but in our normal day to day of what we become so cushioned in and accustomed to. We
Right.
do want to think forward because we don't know what a day may bring.
Mm-mm.
I wanted to ask you your definition of success. How has it changed from your days in the studios to now that you're a coach and business owner?
That's a great question. I think success is what you want at any moment. So, success for me from a 5-year-old girl who wanted to work in Hollywood until I accomplished that, that was it. That was the end all be all. But that would be really sad if at 30 years old, I decided that was it for my life. So, you can have success at different ventures. And I think yeah, success right now is spending every single moment with my kids while they're here with me and young and want to hang out with me. And the fact that I can have a business helping others while I can do that with my kids means everything. So I feel like I've hit the jackpot twice now in life. And just, yeah, I think it's your
Yeah.
personal success at any point.
Yeah. So, one of the other things that you emphasize is the importance of building the joyful, purpose driven businesses. How do you help your clients identify what truly brings them joy and purpose?
Yeah, we dive deep. I'm a certified UMAP coach, and UMAP is
Okay.
an assessment that can really help you dive into those values and passions. But really, it's anything that you're thinking about. Like for me, it was helping people, it was helping kids at first with my franchise, and now helping people in my coaching. But it's anything that brings you that joy that makes you excited to go to work in the morning and happy when you get home to your family at the end of the day. And it can also be there's a lot of businesses that might not be really like glamorous and sexy. Like I know one of the top franchises to open that's really successful is waste management or helping senior citizens in their home. Those are two really profitable franchises. They're not glamorous, but if you can have a business that brings you the money that you can live that lifestyle that is comforting and does feel like it's successful, then I think that's what is your passion at the end of the day. You found a business that's allowing you to live the life you want.
And you're also looking for ways you're helping other people.
Yeah.
I've often thought about the help that I would bring my staff by bringing them on or training a new recruit, let's say out of college or university. You never meant it. Sometimes you don't even, I don't want to say the word never, sometimes you just don't realize how much of a positive impact you're having on somebody else. And it sounds like maybe some people are feeling unfulfilled and they come to you and they say, I just feel so unfulfilled. And so you can take them on that deep dive, right? And answer those questions for them. So, how about networking? What role do you see that playing in career transitions and how people can leverage their existing network or maybe book of business when they're pivoting?
I think it's really essential. And I think, LinkedIn's another great way to network, but also you can network in person at community events. You can also network even in just groups. Like there's groups in Facebook or LinkedIn where you can just go in and start to add to the conversation on whatever interests you or whatever business you're thinking of going into or industry you're thinking of moving into and join the conversation and meet people. He commented the same as I did. let's DM and have a virtual coffee. So there's ways to do it for introverts as well. But I think it's really important because that's how you grow your network. And you honestly, truly never know how someone else can help you or how you can help
That's right.
them.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, ladies and gentlemen, why you want to have your digital persona updated, because you
Yeah.
just never know. So, in the closing minutes of our conversation, Shannon, how can our listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best way is to go to secondactsuccess.co. That's my main website. You can get to links for my new book, for my podcast, ways to work with me, and there's lots of free resources as well.
Excellent. So, looking to your next maybe 5 years, do you have some goals and some things set up that you can share with us?
Yeah, well, I'm excited to have my first book, and that's going to hopefully lead to more speaking opportunities. I really want to speak at more like conferences, especially women's empowerment conferences, to really be able to give women permission to
Yeah,
look outside of where they are and not stay stuck. And I want to write more too. I want to write fiction though for next.
good.
So I'm
Nice.
hoping to do that down the line as well.
Yes, my wife and I were talking about a couple of the 5 a.m. podcast books that we want to bring out.
Yeah.
And that fiction, there was a book that I had in college that it was one of our textbooks, but it was actually written in a fiction style
Ooh.
that the professor had found somewhere. Absolutely, our stories sell. And that was probably the best way for information to get into Michael's head, was to read this textbook that was written in the form of a fictional story. And it was
Ooh.
great. And our stories do sell, right? Like that's what we want to have, is those stories. And I know that's why people listen here to 5 a.m. podcast, because it's like we're having a conversation and they're in the diner booth behind us. And as you do, you just eavesdrop and you listen
Yeah.
in on what these strangers are talking about. So bring your friends, share this episode, ladies and gentlemen. And as Shannon has already said, before we wrap up, I want to remind you once again just to go over to her website, secondactsuccess.co. Now, if you put a little slash and the word resources behind it, you'll find some goodies that our friend Shannon has prepared for you. So it's secondactsuccess.co/resources. You'll find some goodie bags or other things. I don't want to build it up too much. You'll be surprised and impressed. It'll be great. And she'll be happy. So, Shannon,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Michael. This is so great. We could talk all day, I think.
Yes, we could. So we'll just have to have you back, or we'll have to meet in the middle somewhere.
Sounds
Chicago
great.
almost sounds central.
That is central. We'll do that.
And thank you to our viewers. We appreciate you joining in on this conversation, and we've loved having you here. If you haven't already, I'll say it again: like, subscribe, share with your friends. I know there's a name of somebody, at least one person that you're thinking of. Yes, they want to hear this. They probably need to hear this, and when they make it big in their second act, they'll thank you, because it just be good to your friends and share this with them. And of course, as I've asked already, I'll ask again: 5-star review, ladies and gentlemen, on your favorite podcast player. We would appreciate that. And those that haven't found us yet, that will find us because of your 5-star review, they'll thank you as well. So there's a whole lot of gratitude going on at 5am podcast. And we would be remiss if I didn't mention buymeacoffee.com/5am podcast. Thank you to everyone that bought us cups of coffee this week and last. We appreciate it. Thank you for helping us seize our day and you seize your day. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I'm Michael Klassen, and have a great day. We've enjoyed having you here. Bye for now. There we go.